This where the killing starts.
And the woman desperately crying out, "This is where the killing starts," is Althea, the same woman who lost 4 sons to gun violence.
Rappers are known for their music, fame, and the struggles they rise above. But some stories take a dark turn no one could imagine. Today, we'll look at the most shocking cases of rappers who took the lives of their own mothers. Let's begin with this rapper who, despite claims he did so much to support his family, ended up killing his own mother.
Stuff in these streets, people rely on me. They rely on me. You thought I knew or planned that I was gonna be taking care of my brothers and sisters? I'm the reward. This life I built for you is the reward. You know what? You can leave.
It was a case so disturbing, so deeply personal, that it stunned not just Chicago, but the entire nation. All for a silly reason: a young man killed his own mother, and fate came knocking for him very fast. A rising rapper, known for flaunting his wealth on social media, became infamous not for his music, but for something much darker. In a story that defied comprehension, people struggled to understand the cruelty, but that was only the beginning. What unfolded in the years after his arrest would only deepen the public's shock. Because long after his conviction, after the trial ended and the cameras turned off, prison reports would reveal that Wilson was assaulted behind bars, targeted by other inmates in ways that left even correctional officers disturbed. This is the case of Wilson, a rapper who went from flexing in music videos to serving a 99-year prison sentence.
I'm QC, I'm ballin', and I'm rich, hold up. Doors on the car, go up. See a bad bitch like skirt, hold up. Take her to my home, kiss her on her neck. Get her out her thumb, but not until she's I know she would.
This what's wrong with me.
This tragic story unfolded in the bustling city of Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. It pulses with life, known for its striking lakefront skyline, rich jazz and blues heritage, and a deep cultural pride that runs through every neighborhood. Its people are resilient and diverse, tough yet warm, and their sense of identity is rooted in generations of history, hustle, and hometown loyalty. But in 2012, beneath the surface of its vibrant streets, the city struggled with a troubling wave of violent crime that cast a shadow over its communities. Kwame Wilson, born in the early 1990s, says, was in his early 20s when he started pursuing a music career. Going by the name Young QC, he used YouTube and social media to promote his songs and flashy lifestyle. But behind the glitz, there was a hunger for more. More fame, more money, more attention. And it was that hunger, prosecutors would later argue, that led him down a chilling path. It all began with Yolanda Holmes. Yolanda wasn't just Wilson's mother. She was his everything, his provider, his protector, his biggest supporter. By all accounts, Yolanda did everything she could to give her son a better life. She was a single mother raising her only child on the north side of Chicago in the Uptown neighborhood.
Mimi did not get in the water.
Don't tell the people.
Oh.
A hairstylist by profession, Yolanda worked hard to ensure Wilson never went without. She helped him find work, supported his ambitions, and even gifted him a Ford Mustang, customized to his taste, complete with luxury upgrades. To the outside world, Yolanda was a loving mother. To those closest to her, she was generous, selfless, and fiercely devoted to her son. She had no idea that the very person she loved most would one day become the architect of her death. On September 1, 2012, Yolanda Holmes went to bed inside her apartment in Chicago's Uptown neighborhood. At around 4:15 a.m., a man named Eugene Spencer entered the building. He didn't break in. He had been let in by Wilson's then-girlfriend, who drove him to the apartment and gave him access. Inside, Yolanda was sleeping in her bed, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Eugene made his way through the quiet apartment and walked directly into the bedroom where Yolanda lay. He raised his weapon and fired. Yolanda was shot while asleep, caught in one of the most vulnerable states a person can be in. But the violence didn't stop there. Moments later, her boyfriend, who had also been in the apartment, rushed in after hearing the gunshot. A physical struggle broke out. Eugene attacked him and knocked him unconscious, leaving the man lying on the floor, badly injured. Then, Eugene received a mysterious call from his client. The person on the other end of the phone gave a clear and cold instruction. Eugene was told to make sure Yolanda was dead. Following that command, Eugene returned to the bedroom, where Yolanda was already gravely wounded. But he had to be thorough. He stabbed her to ensure she would not survive. The act was not just brutal, it was deliberate. On the morning of September 2, 2012, police in Chicago responded to a call from an apartment building in the Uptown area. When first responders arrived at the apartment, the scene was horrific. Yolanda Holmes had suffered fatal gunshot and stab wounds. Yolanda was pronounced dead shortly after. She was 45 years old. Her boyfriend, though still alive, was unconscious and badly injured from the assault. It was clear to the police that this was not a random home invasion. There was no forced entry, nothing had been stolen, and the level of violence pointed to something far more personal. What they couldn't have known, at least not yet, was just how deeply personal it really was. Officers began their investigation by interviewing neighbors, collecting surveillance footage, and preserving any forensic evidence found at the scene. Soon, they had their first breakthrough. One of their first leads came from the statements of Yolanda's boyfriend, who regained consciousness after the attack. Though he couldn't identify the assailant, his recollection of the struggle painted a timeline. He told investigators the attacker had entered quietly and had one goal. He had targeted Yolanda directly and left with a purpose. That's when detectives started looking closer at Yolanda's life, her routine, her associates, and most importantly, her relationships. The focus eventually turned to her only child, 23-year-old Wilson. At first, there was no direct evidence tying Wilson to the crime, but something about his behavior didn't sit right with detectives. While family and friends mourned, Wilson seemed detached. He was still uploading YouTube videos, still posting on social media, and still flexing money in public. For a young man whose mother had just been murdered, there was little sign of grief. Investigators began looking into his finances, and that's when the red flags really started to emerge. In the weeks following Yolanda's murder, Wilson accessed his mother's accounts and withdrew large sums of money. Nearly $70,000, 0 cents, disappeared from her savings. Bank records showed him using the funds for customizations on his Mustang, high-end shopping sprees, and excessive cash withdrawals. One viral video even showed him handing out money to strangers on the street, tossing bills into a cheering crowd.
Yeah, man. About to go get this $1,000 out for the fans, man. Really, I'm gonna take out 20,000, man. Just to show people, you feel me? I'm on a whole different level with this, man. I take this serious, man. So you can't put me in the same category as the others. feel me, man? I don't play no games. You feel me? I don't play no games, man. You know, I do this for real, bro. I don't got no problem with giving back, man. I'm the only one out here with a show that's actually giving back, you feel me? And I got proof to show it, you feel me? Shout out to this fan I'm finna go slide on, man. I'm finna take care of you.
That same video, later shown in court, became a symbol of how quickly he had monetized his mother's death. But it was the digital trail, texts, calls, and transactions that ultimately unraveled the truth. Detectives subpoenaed Wilson's phone records. What they found was damning. In the days before Yolanda was killed, Wilson had been in contact with a man named Eugene Spencer. Eugene, 22 at the time, had a history of criminal behavior and was known to law enforcement. The frequency and timing of the calls raised alarms. Investigators also discovered that Wilson's girlfriend had given Eugene a ride to Yolanda's apartment on the night of the murder. It was enough to bring Eugene in for questioning. Under interrogation, Eugene admitted to being at the scene. He told investigators that he had entered the apartment, shot Yolanda while she slept, and attacked her boyfriend during the commotion. But what shocked detectives most was Spencer's explanation for why he was there. He claimed Wilson had hired him. He said Wilson promised him money in exchange for killing his mother. Eugene even alleged that during the act, Wilson called to make sure the job was done, telling him to return and confirm she was dead. Detectives now had motive, confession, and a timeline that lined up, so they moved in. On December 20, 2013, over a year after the crime, Wilson was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and home invasion. Eugene Spencer was charged alongside him. The news of Wilson's arrest stunned the community.
I ain't gonna say I knew him, but I was like, you know who Chris the Cornbread is, right? Mm-hmm. Like Baba's again, Cornbread. Yeah. Him and Chris was on the Reawakening, and the dude, his mama was too. But Chris went and he did his own show, and that's what I was on. It was called All About Chris, and he had the nigga around, and when he was coming around, he was like, you know, flashy gang, like with the cars that with the doors up and shit, like, and he was like, you could tell he had some bread, so I was low key like motivated and wanted to hang around them niggas, you know what I'm saying? Because I wanted their age, but yeah, I felt like I had to touch on the situation because like, damn, bro, like I was around dude, not knowing like that's how he got his money, like, and I wanted to like be around him, like now I'm glad I wasn't around him, like, you know what I'm saying, like,
yeah.
Some couldn't believe it. Others said they had always felt something was off about him. His lack of emotion at the funeral, his flashy behavior after Yolanda's death. And now, prosecutors were calling him the mastermind behind one of the most cold-blooded crimes in recent memory. Then the police revealed his motive. Police revealed that Wilson had been the sole beneficiary of his mother's life insurance policy. He also had access to her bank accounts and used them freely after her death.
This what's wrong with me.
He didn't just inherit money, he looted it, and investigators argued that he planned the killing specifically to access those funds. In press briefings, officials called it an act of greed. They described how Yolanda had supported her son emotionally, financially, and personally, giving him everything from money to career support. But to Wilson, it still wasn't enough. According to prosecutors, he wanted it all. He wanted fame, power, and money, and he was willing to trade his mother's life to get it. The investigation also turned up more shocking details. Forensic evidence added further weight to the case. Investigators found physical evidence linking Spencer to the crime scene. They also uncovered security footage placing Wilson and his girlfriend in key locations before and after the murder. Witness testimony from friends and family members described Wilson's strange behavior in the days following his mother's death, including his apparent lack of grief and his sudden spending spree. The prosecution now had a timeline, a motive, digital records, and a cooperating accomplice. Everything pointed back to one conclusion. Yolanda Holmes didn't die in a robbery gone wrong. She died in a calculated hit set up by the very son she raised. With both suspects in custody, the case moved toward trial. But what the public didn't yet know was that this wasn't the end of Wilson's story. Behind bars, as he awaited judgment, new chapters were already unfolding. Chapters filled with violence, revenge, and humiliation. The same man who had orchestrated the murder of his own mother was now becoming a target himself. And the justice system wasn't done with him yet. As Wilson sat in the defendant's chair in a Cook County courtroom, the evidence against him painted a devastating picture. For prosecutors, this wasn't just a murder. It was the ultimate betrayal. A son who had been given everything by his mother, only to turn around and orchestrate her death. In March 2019, after years of preparation and mounting evidence, both Wilson and Eugene Spencer went to trial. The charges included first-degree murder, attempted murder, and home invasion. The courtroom was tense from the very beginning, filled with media, community members, and Yolanda Holmes' loved ones. Every detail of the plot was dissected before the jury, from the bank withdrawals and surveillance videos to the chilling call Spencer claimed he received mid-murder, urging him to ensure Yolanda was truly dead. Prosecutors presented the YouTube video of Wilson throwing wads of cash into the air for his so-called fans, a visual metaphor for what they described as his obsession with fame and material wealth. They recounted how Yolanda had spoiled her son with gifts, including a Mustang, designer clothes, and a job, yet he still wanted more. More money, more attention, more status. And for that, she paid with her life. They argued that Wilson's motive wasn't just financial, it was rooted in narcissism and entitlement. He didn't just want to be successful, he wanted to be seen as a star. And if that meant sacrificing the person who gave him everything, he was willing to do it. The defense struggled to counter the mountain of evidence. Spencer's own statements pointed directly to Wilson as the mastermind. Forensic evidence supported the timeline. The digital trail confirmed premeditation, and the jury was left to consider what kind of person would set in motion such a gruesome and personal crime. On March 8, 2019, the verdict was delivered. Both men were found guilty on all counts, and then came sentencing. In January 2020, Judge Stanley Sachs addressed the court and the defendants. He didn't hold back. He reminded everyone that Yolanda Holmes had done everything for her son. She gave him love, opportunity, and financial support, and in return, she was betrayed in the most violent and unforgivable way. Then she delivered a crushing sentence. Judge Sachs sentenced Wilson to 99 years in prison. Eugene Spencer received 100 years. The message was clear. This was not only a crime against a person, but a crime against family, trust, and the most sacred bond between a parent and child. In the courtroom that day, Wilson showed little visible emotion. He slouched in his chair and only nodded as the sentence was handed down. When given the opportunity to speak, he said very little, only claiming that no one had loved his mother more than him. But to the people in that room, those words rang hollow. The public response to the case was one of disbelief and outrage. How could someone murder the person who gave them life, and then flaunt the rewards like a prize? In Chicago's uptown neighborhood, where Yolanda had lived and worked as a hairstylist, her absence was deeply felt. She wasn't just another name in the headlines, she had been a beloved member of the community. Her clients remembered her as kind, driven, and stylish. Neighbors spoke of her generosity. Friends called her a devoted mother. Her funeral, held just days after her death in 2012, was attended by many who didn't yet know the dark truth behind her murder. Some noticed that Wilson didn't sit near the front, that he spent most of the service outside, detached from the rest of the mourners. Over the years, family members and loved ones continued to express their sorrow, not just for Yolanda's loss, but for the fact that it came at the hands of her only child. Her cousin, who had once seen Wilson as struggling with grief, would later say that the betrayal cut deeper than any headline could express. And for Wilson, life behind bars has been anything but quiet. By 2015, just a few years into his pretrial detention at Cook County Jail, he was already facing the harsh realities of incarceration. That year, an incident occurred that made headlines and sparked further concern about his safety within the facility. According to official records, Wilson was assaulted during a confrontation on Tier 3G. The incident began when another inmate unexpectedly approached him while he was standing near the phones. Without prior warning or provocation, the man removed the top half of his jail-issued uniform and assumed a combative stance. Wilson initially appeared confused, unsure if the man was serious, but the situation escalated quickly. The attacker threw a punch, triggering a brief fight between the two men. A third inmate attempted to break it up, and for a moment, it seemed like the conflict was over. But just seconds later, the same inmate returned, and this time, the violence intensified. Wilson was cornered again and struck repeatedly. In the chaos, he tried to hold off his attacker until corrections officers arrived to regain control of the tier. Later reports revealed that the attack didn't end with just fists.
It's the 14th of September 2015. Sergeant Contreras is interviewing an inmate involved in a 1010 on tier 3G. What's your name?
Call me Wilson.
What's your ID number?
2013-12-24-144.
What happened on 3G?
I was standing by the phones, and then that guy, I don't know him. I don't know where he came from. I don't know who he is. He got off the table and took his shirt off. Unbuttoned his jumpsuit and stepped to me and just got in like fighting position. I thought he was playing. I didn't know if he was for real or what. I don't know him. I never seen him before. And then he got real close. And then he swung, and then the fight occurred, and then the guy tried to stop it, the other guy tried to stop it, and then it stopped, and then I was looking away, then next thing I know, when I turned around, he came back up again and tried to swing on me again. And then I just held him until y'all came, and then that's it.
14th September 2015, Sergeant Contreras interviewing an inmate involved in a 1010 on tier 3G. What's your name?
Mark Williams.
What's your ID number?
2015-02-20187.
What happened upstairs on 3G?
I had an altercation with a young man. He stepped to me, asked me did I want to fight him. I approached him with my fist. We continued to fight, and another guy came in behind me. Other than that, I don't know what happened.
Is that it?
Yeah.
According to documents that circulated online, Wilson had been assaulted in the shower area and allegedly stabbed multiple times. Details surrounding the incident were difficult to confirm in full due to privacy and security policies within the jail system, but sources close to the facility indicated that he had sustained significant injuries and required medical attention. Despite the brutality of the assault, Wilson survived. The incident immediately drew speculation. Some believed that the nature of his crime, having his own mother murdered, had made him a target in custody. In the jail system, certain crimes are viewed with extreme disdain, and matricide ranks among the most reviled. Others speculated that his brief notoriety as young QC and his history of flaunting wealth may have made him a lightning rod for violence. The betrayal of a mother by her son is one of the most disturbing crimes a community can process. And in the case of Wilson, the fallout continues to echo. His pursuit of fame came at the ultimate cost. And now he is serving a nearly century-long sentence with no chance of freedom. This case wasn't about gang violence. It wasn't about drugs or street feuds. It was about greed, about ego, about a distorted sense of entitlement that turned a young man against the person who gave him everything. Yolanda Holmes didn't die in a robbery gone wrong. She died in a calculated act of betrayal, carried out by someone she trusted unconditionally. It's a haunting reminder that evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it grows in silence, inside homes, inside families, hidden beneath the surface. Yolanda Holmes gave her son everything. She tried to keep him away from the streets, away from his father's violent legacy. But ultimately, her kindness and trust were exploited. We owe it to her, to every mother like her, to remember this story. Sometimes justice comes not just in a courtroom, but in the stories we refuse to forget.
In the early hours of September 6th, 2021, a man walked into an apartment in search of the woman with whom he shared a child. Minutes later, the bathroom inside that apartment became the site of a deadly shootout. He encountered the kind of betrayal that spiraled into bloodshed. A love triangle turned fatal, and the victim wasn't a stranger. He was Maurice Vaughn, the new boyfriend of his baby's mother. Maurice was a rising rapper and had no idea this night would be his last, because his good friend would shoot him for sleeping with his wife. What truly unfolded in that cramped bathroom was more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. This is the life and death of Maurice Vaughn Jackson. Columbus, Georgia, is a vibrant mid-sized city known for scenic spots like the Riverwalk, urban whitewater rafting, and historic landmarks. Its atmosphere blends small-town southern charm with a military edge, creating a diverse community of artists, soldiers, families, and students. In 2021, Columbus reported over 60 homicides, one of the deadliest years in its history, with violent crime rates significantly above the national average and community leaders calling for urgent action. It was in this dreadful year that Maurice met his end. Maurice Vaughn Jackson, better known in his community as Lil Nuke, was 26 years old when he lost his life. Born in the mid-1990s, Maurice was raised in Columbus, Georgia, a city both vibrant and volatile, where music and violence often coexist. From a young age, Maurice gravitated toward music as a form of expression and survival. Maurice was introduced to a life of violence at an age so early that it left a lasting scar and trauma from one fateful incident. When Maurice was in the 7th grade, around 12 or 13 years old, he was shot while sleeping.
Yeah, about like 13. I was about like 13, but I got.
No.
Yeah, I got in my sleep.
7th grade?
7th grade, yeah.
No.
Yeah. Sure.
So then, all right, that's interesting then. So which one came first then, as far as like it was the song, or you getting and inspiring the song for you to make the song?
Fuck with me hard, but
yeah.
It was just my folks in the streets and shit. So it was already like,
yeah.
Oh, that Nuke.
Yeah.
It was already there.
It quickly became an incident that would leave lasting scars and fuel his creative drive. He funneled his experiences into gritty, autobiographical rap lyrics that resonated with listeners navigating similar struggles.
Hey, whoa, run around with the chopper, just brought me your diamond back, and it got my back, better know how to act, ain't with that talking, ain't trying to hear none of that, hey, whoa. You say that I Roger, but come get your money back. Yeah, we ran off in your shit and we coming back. Running your spot, that's your where your money at. If I'm lying, I'm flying. A nigga could me right now if I'm lying. Hey, whoa, I'm dying for mines. A nigga could run out right now and I'm fine. He dying, leave increasing this shit with this iron. If I don't find what I supposed to find, leave him ugly, blow out his mind. Leave him bloody, him and his buddy. Yes, I'm not cause I'm grimy, dirty. Get you robbed by your own cousin. In the hood with this shit, got my Glock in the stick with me. Shit you talking about swerving. Think I'm worried, body from body. Got 6, got 40s, before got a body. Run down on the nigga, put one in this noggin. I been with this shit, ask my mama, I'm toxic. This shit get body. Had them, what's cracking, this shit, we acting.
Been through so much pain, I need surgery. Ay. Keep my gun on me cause I'm worried. Ay. I ain't scared of love, I'm just hurting. Ay. Yeah. Ay. Whoa. Hey. Whoa. Black boy lost his mother. Simo lost his mother. Then I lost my brother from another mother. Yeah, I know she crossed me, but I still love her. I know you was salty. Birds flock together. BP, he got kidney failure. Hope he eating better. Cuz going blind, I pray, I hope he seeing better. Jeremy on my mind, I wish I could have been that with you. Ring got that bullet, wouldn't never hit you. Black light matter, but niggas still niggas. My brother act just like me. Yeah, that's my little nigga. You say you don't like me. Tell me why, little nigga. Cause I'm getting richer. And I been that nigga. I don't even trust you. Not even family members. Keep telling you to hustle, but you ain't got it in you. Keep my gun on.
His music began gaining local attention, and his online following grew, with many fans who saw in him both pain and potential.
Ay, I lost it all, but I woke up to 100,000. I'm gonna ball, but I keep a tape in case you try to find me. I don't fuck with y'all, cause these niggas snakes, yeah, these niggas shots. Deep inside my bag, I can't even flex, I can't come up by it.
But behind the music was a young man striving for more. Maurice was known to his family as quiet, focused, and fiercely loyal. He worked at a local solar energy farm and kept close ties with his loved ones. There's no public record indicating he had children, but he was romantically involved with a woman named Channa Powell, who had her own complicated past. Channa had been in an on-again, off-again relationship with another man, Quincy Wade, also 26.
I don't give a fuck about you, or you. I don't give a fuck who you're. I don't care. I'm trying to be rich.
They shared a 7-year-old child together and had been entangled in a stormy relationship for years. But Quincy was not just any man. He was amongst Maurice's group of friends, and most of the people around Quincy and Channa knew that the two usually found their way back to each other. According to court testimony, Quincy and Channa's relationship was riddled with volatility, police reports, and allegations of past abuse. Despite this, they continued to have contact, especially because of their child. They remained in each other's lives, and for this, Quincy believed it was only a matter of time before he was back with Channa, but some others thought otherwise. Channa was done with the abusive cycle and wanted something different. So when the couple broke up again, Channa found another man, but she didn't go too far. Channa had started seeing Maurice, Quincy's friend. They worked together at the same solar farm, and their connection quickly turned romantic. Maybe Maurice didn't know that Quincy felt entitled to Channa and wanted her back. Or maybe he did and felt that Channa was worth the fight. Either way, Quincy was not going to back off easily, especially after what he learned. In the weeks leading up to that fateful day, Channa learned she was 11 weeks pregnant and believed Quincy was the father. They had recently been together, but she did not think it was enough reason to stay away from Maurice. So her love for Maurice continued. On September 6, 2021, Labor Day, Channa and Maurice spent the day at a family cookout before returning to the Patriot Place apartment of Channa's friend, Rickle Polk, just after midnight. What they didn't know was that Quincy had been keeping track. According to text records and witness statements, he had been sending Channa angry messages earlier in the night. He demanded to know her whereabouts and who she was with. But when he had had enough at about 2:30 a.m., Quincy showed up at the apartment. When no one answered the front door, he entered through an unlocked sliding glass door on the patio, armed with a 9mm pistol. Inside the apartment, panic set in. Maurice, Channa, and Rickle ran into the bathroom and locked the door. Maurice got into the bathtub and hid behind the shower curtain. Channa and Rickle crouched by the sink. Quincy kicked the door in and burst into the bathroom. What happened next would unravel everything. Channa testified that Quincy pointed his gun at her head, then at her stomach, and threatened to kill her and her unborn baby. At that moment, Maurice pulled back the shower curtain and made his move. He fired at Quincy. Both men had guns. Police would later determine that each weapon was fired 8 times, 16 shots total, inside that small bathroom. Shell casings were jammed in both pistols, indicating both weapons had malfunctioned during the chaotic exchange, and a life was caught in the crossfire.
Hey, whoa, hey, whoa. Pull up in some fan, make them listen. Make a nigga pay attention. I didn't have a plan, I had a vision. Took some losses on the grind, I had to risk it. Hey, I am on my grind, ain't got no kick. You gotta watch a nigga move, watch how he kick.
Maurice was hit 4 times. One bullet went straight through his chest, piercing his heart. Others struck his arm, hip, and back. He collapsed to the floor, bleeding out. Channa rushed to his side and tried to apply pressure to his chest with a towel, but it was of no use. Maurice took one last breath and died in her arms. Channa later told police that she considered driving him to the hospital herself, but realized it was too late. Meanwhile, Quincy, despite being shot twice in the legs, fled the scene. Back at the apartment, his victims were left traumatized in the aftermath of the violence. The chaos inside that apartment had ended in silence, but for law enforcement in Columbus, Georgia, the clock had just started ticking. By the time police were called to the Patriot Place apartments on Buena Vista Road in the early hours of September 7th, 2021, it was already too late to save 26-year-old Maurice Vaughn Jackson. Officers arrived at a deeply disturbing scene. A man dying on a blood-slicked bathroom floor, a distraught woman clutching his body, and bullet casings scattered across the tile. It was just after 3 a.m. when Muskogee County Coroner Buddy Bryan officially pronounced Maurice dead at 3:22 a.m., marking the city's 50th homicide of the year. Officers from the Columbus Police Department moved swiftly. They secured the apartment, collected the shell casings, and began interviewing witnesses. Among the first to speak with investigators was Channa Powell, the woman at the center of the incident. Shaken and covered in blood, she recounted the terrifying moments leading up to the shooting. Her initial interview revealed key information. She, Maurice, and her friend Rickle had been inside the bathroom when Quincy Wade, her ex-boyfriend and the father of her unborn child, entered the apartment uninvited. She said he kicked in the bathroom door, pointed a gun at her head and stomach, and threatened to kill her and her baby. Moments later, the gunfire started. But detectives quickly took note of inconsistencies in her story. Some of the most damning details, like the threat against her and her child, were not mentioned during the initial interviews. It wasn't until a follow-up interview conducted 9 days later on September 16th that she added those claims. But at the scene, the most pressing task was clear: find Quincy Wade. The manhunt began almost immediately. Investigators quickly identified Quincy as the primary suspect based on Channa's statement, physical evidence, and the presence of a second weapon at the scene. But Quincy was already gone. According to witnesses and phone records, after being shot twice in the legs during the gunfight, Quincy had fled the apartment. Instead of seeking help locally, he drove over 40 miles north to his apartment in LaGrange. There, he woke up his roommate, Xavier Stevenson, and insisted they go to a hospital, but not one in Columbus. They headed to LaGrange's Wellstar West Georgia Medical Center, where they hoped to avoid raising suspicion. But investigators were one step ahead. Aware that the suspect had fled and may seek medical attention, Columbus authorities alerted regional hospitals to be on the lookout for a gunshot victim matching Quincy's description. When he arrived at the LaGrange hospital, bleeding from both legs, he didn't go unnoticed. Hospital staff contacted authorities and police soon arrived. At first, Quincy and his roommate tried to cover their tracks. Stevenson told officers that Quincy had been shot in Atlanta during a robbery attempt while trying to buy marijuana. But under further questioning, especially once Columbus detectives got involved, the story began to fall apart. Stevenson eventually admitted that the Atlanta robbery narrative had been fabricated to protect Quincy. In reality, he had been shot by Maurice Jackson in the bathroom of the Buena Vista Road apartment. This confession helped police piece together the timeline of events, reinforcing the version of the story that Channa had shared. As detectives followed up with additional witnesses, including the apartment's renter, Rickle Polk, a clearer picture of the incident emerged. Raquel had been inside the apartment when Quincy entered, and according to her testimony, she fled in fear when he kicked down the bathroom door. That left only Channa and Maurice inside when the bullets began flying. Back at the crime scene investigators recovered 2 handguns. Both weapons had malfunctioned during the shootout. Spent cartridges were lodged in each firing chamber. Maurice's Glock still had 3 live rounds remaining. Quincy's Smith & Wesson had a magazine with 8 bullets, later found underneath Maurice's body. The investigation now turned to intent. Detectives worked to determine whether Quincy's actions constituted murder, or whether there was enough evidence to suggest that he acted in self-defense, as he would later claim. At the center of this analysis were 2 competing questions. Who shot first? Was Quincy legally allowed to enter the apartment? Prosecutors believed the answer was clear. Quincy had no right to be there. He had entered uninvited, through a sliding glass door while carrying a loaded gun. By kicking in the bathroom door and confronting Channa with a weapon, he had initiated a chain of events that made self-defense a difficult claim to argue. But Quincy's defense attorneys disagreed. They insisted that Maurice had ambushed Quincy by shooting him first from behind the shower curtain. They argued that Quincy had no idea Maurice was even present when he entered the apartment and that he only drew his weapon in response to being attacked. Nevertheless, Quincy was arrested and transported back to Muskogee County. His charges included malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and home invasion. He was held in jail pending trial with no bond granted. His preliminary hearing was scheduled for September 10th, where prosecutors would formally present the charges. As news of the arrest broke, the Columbus community remained divided. Some saw Quincy as a violent man who had let jealousy lead to murder. Others saw a young father caught in a volatile relationship, acting on impulse in a moment of fear. But regardless of opinion, one truth remained undeniable. Maurice Vaughn Jackson was dead. A young rapper with dreams of stardom, gone in a matter of seconds. A shootout had left one man in a jail cell, another in a grave, and a woman caught in the crossfire of a tragedy that had been brewing for years. And still, the question lingered. Would Quincy Wade be held accountable for murder, or would a jury believe his claim of self-defense? Quincy Wade spent 2 years in jail awaiting trial for the killing of Maurice Vaughn Jackson. In that time, public speculation about what truly happened on September 7, 2021, grew louder. Everyone's questions would ultimately fall into the hands of 12 jurors inside a Muskogee County courtroom. The trial began in late September 2023 under Judge Bobby Peters. From the outset, prosecutors made it clear that they weren't disputing the fact that both men had opened fire. What they challenged was the legality of Quincy's presence inside that apartment, and whether his actions triggered a fatal sequence that made self-defense an invalid argument.
On your side, this is News 3 at 5.
Good evening and thank you for trusting WRBL News 3. I'm Phil Scoggins. My co-anchor Teresa Whitaker is off tonight. Testimony began this morning in the trial of a man accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend in September of 2021. Jurors are not tasked with deciding whether the defendant shot the victim. Rather, was it done in self-defense? WRBL's Hannah James was in court and files this report.
On September 7th of 2021 at approximately 2:30 a.m., Quincy Wade shot and killed Maurice Vaughn Jackson. That will not be in dispute in this case.
Testimony shows Wade entered the residence his ex-girlfriend, Shayna Powell, was staying in uninvited. Wade then kicked in the bathroom door both Powell and Jackson were hiding in.
The evidence is going to show that as they're having this conversation in the bathroom, Mr. Wade is facing towards where Mrs. Powell is, which is kind of in an area behind the bathroom door, across from the bathroom mirror. And they're having this conversation. All right? And at that point, Mr. Wade is twice by Mr. Jackson, who comes out of the shower curtain. Unbeknownst to Mr. Wade, doesn't even know he's there. And shoots him twice. All right? And in response to that, Mr. Wade fires rounds to defend himself.
In a way, this case is about self-defense, but it's about Maurice Vaughn Jackson defending himself and Shayna.
Testimony painted a picture of years' worth of domestic disputes and violence between Wade and Powell. At the time of Powell was pregnant with Wade's child. However, she was seeing Jackson. Here's what Powell testified happened moments before it rang out.
Did Mr. Wade say anything at that point? What did he say? At that point, Maurice Jackson started out of the tub. He had a gun, and you will hear that he could legally own a gun. he had a gun and he took it out. 16 shots were fired in that bathroom. We do not know who shot first.
The defense argued Powell never told this to police. Instead, she made up the statement of Wade threatening to shoot her.
When Ms. Powell was first interviewed and talked to about this incident, she didn't say nothing about Mr. Wade. Pulled the gun on her, put it to her stomach, put it to her head, say, "I'm gonna shoot you and the baby." That's all cap. That's all made up.
Testimony expected to continue Tuesday in front of Judge Bobby Peters. Reporting in Columbus, Hannah James, WRBL News 3, on your side.
The state argues there are limitations to self-defense because Wade entered the home uninvited.
Prosecutors argued that Quincy was the primary aggressor, that he entered a residence uninvited, armed with a weapon, and confronted his pregnant ex-girlfriend and her new partner in a rage. They said he had no legal right to be there and that his threatening behavior toward Channa Powell with a gun constituted aggravated assault before any shots were ever fired. The prosecution leaned heavily on Channa's testimony. She told the court that Quincy forced his way into the apartment and pointed his pistol at her head and her stomach, threatening to kill her and their unborn child. Moments later, she said, Maurice emerged from the shower and the shooting began, but the defense countered with a drastically different version of events. Quincy's attorney, William Kendrick, acknowledged that his client entered the apartment but maintained that he did not know Maurice was inside. He claimed the shooting was a result of Maurice ambushing Quincy from behind the shower curtain and shooting first. Kendrick emphasized that Quincy only fired back in a desperate attempt to defend himself after being shot twice in the legs. The courtroom heard from police officers, medical examiners, and Quincy's roommate, Xavier Stevenson, who admitted to helping Quincy flee to LaGrange and fabricating a story about a robbery in Atlanta. The weapons were presented as evidence. Forensic reports confirmed that both guns had jammed during the exchange, each ejecting 8 rounds. Jurors also heard that the most lethal bullet struck Morris directly in the heart. Emotions ran high as family members from both sides filled the benches.
Before both sides rested their case, state's witness Xavier Stevenson took the witness stand, taking sole responsibility for the story he says he made up as to why defendant Quincy Wade ended up in LaGrange after being shot in Columbus by the man he's accused of murdering. Family from both sides hearing this testimony today and sharing their thoughts with me.
My whole feeling is really, I'm just numb to the whole thing. I've been waiting 2 years plus for this moment.
Maurice Vaughn Jackson's mother, Cleopatra Vaughn, is going through emotions as she listens to evidence in the death of her son. Cleopatra heard state witness Xavier Stevenson say he drove the defendant, Quincy Wade, to the hospital the night both men exchanged gunfire.
I told him the story that came up with that we was just gonna say like we was coming from Atlanta. I don't remember the exact story what we exactly said we were gonna say, but the main like we were coming from Atlanta and I wanna say he tried to buy some weed to my rock. But like I said, that was my idea.
The jury also heard from Columbus Police Sergeant Thomas Hill. The state asked Hill about the interview they did with Stevenson and whose idea it was to go to the LaGrange hospital.
He stated that it was Quincy's idea to go to LaGrange Hospital.
During cross-examination, Kendrick asked Sergeant Hill about his interview with Stevenson and what he learned in that interview.
And is it true that you learned during that interview that Mr. Jackson was in the shower when it happened?
That's what Mr. Stevenson reported had been said to him by Mr. Quincy.
Both sides resting their case. Cleopatra Vaughn says after hearing all the evidence, it doesn't matter if her son first or not.
He was where he was supposed to be, unbothered and unbothering. He had the right to defend himself and whomever he was with at that time.
The suspect's mother, Jolene Wade, says she feels like there are a lot of inconsistencies in this case.
But I'm telling you, it's one common denominator with this whole thing, and that's Shayna Powell. And I think she should have got some charges.
Maurice's father and mother attended nearly every session. heartbroken but determined to see justice served for their son.
It's not about who shot first. It's a case about one thing, when my son lost his life, protected himself and who he was with that night. When trouble came knocking on their door, they place to stay where they was, minding their business. That's all the case is about.
Outside the courtroom, Maurice's mother told reporters that it didn't matter who fired first. What mattered was that her son had been unarmed in someone else's home and had tried to protect himself and Chana from a man who had entered with a weapon and intent. On the final day of trial, both sides delivered powerful closing arguments. Prosecutors urged the jury to see through Quincy's self-defense claim, reminding them that under Georgia law, the right to self-defense is void if the person asserting it is committing a felony or is the initial aggressor. But the defense maintained that Quincy acted out of fear after being shot unexpectedly. They said he didn't go there to kill anyone, only to speak with the mother of his unborn child. The jury began deliberating on the evening of September 29, 2023. After nearly 6 hours, they returned a shocking and mixed verdict. Quincy Wade was found not guilty of all felony charges, including malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and home invasion. But he was not completely innocent. He was found guilty only of criminal trespassing, a misdemeanor that carried a maximum sentence of 12 months in jail. But having already served over 2 years while awaiting trial, Quincy had technically fulfilled the sentence for that charge. His attorney stated that he would soon be released, pending resolution of unrelated charges. Meanwhile, the decision left the courtroom in utter shock. Some observers were stunned, others were devastated. Maurice's family, especially his father, expressed deep disappointment. They believed the evidence pointed to murder. They felt the system had failed to protect their son. Maurice's mother said that while nothing would bring her son back, she had hoped for a verdict that acknowledged the loss they had suffered. She said Maurice was unbothered and unbothering that night, and that he died defending himself and the woman he cared about. Maurice's funeral took place shortly after the shooting on September 17, 2021. Family, friends, and members of the local music community gathered to honor his life. He was remembered as a creative spirit, a loyal friend, and someone who was finally beginning to see the fruits of his hard work. The ceremony was filled with music, tributes, and heartbreak. Chana, still pregnant at the time, attended quietly. No one said much to he, but everyone knew she would be forever tied to the tragedy. In the months that followed, Maurice's name lived on through his music. Fans uploaded tribute videos. Local artists dedicated tracks to his memory. But in the shadow of all that remembrance loomed unanswered questions. Could this death have been avoided? Should Chana have alerted the D police sooner about Quincy's threats? Did the system ignore warning signs that might have prevented a man's death? The community was left grappling with these questions, along with broader concerns about domestic violence, jealousy, and gun access. A 21-year-old rapper with millions of streams and a Billboard charting single was accused of gunning down his barber in cold blood in front of the victim's grandmother. This victim was 40-year-old Marcus Wheatley, and his alleged killer was a client so close he considered him his little brother, Superstar Pride. This rising rapper, on the brink of major fame, is now facing a first-degree murder charge for going after an innocent man just after he closed a $3 million deal. A viral success story unraveled in a matter of minutes, and the person he allegedly killed wasn't just a stranger. It was someone he knew, someone who had helped shape his image, someone he called a friend. This is the case of Kadarius Pride, known to the world as Superstar Pride, and the murder of 40-year-old Marcus Wheatley. This tragic case unfolded in Panola County, located in northern Mississippi in the United States. It is home to a tightly woven community with families often rooted in agriculture or small-town life. Its atmosphere is one of gentle Southern charm and rich ties to local heritage. In 2023, the county recorded that property crime was notably higher than the U.S. norm, underscoring local efforts to address theft and burglary concerns. Also, there was a violent crime rate of approximately 55 per 100,000. One of these 55 was Marcus. Marcus Wheatley was born in 1983 and lived in Panola County, Mississippi. He was a longtime resident of the area, known by neighbors and friends as a kind, soft-spoken man who kept a low profile and minded his own business. Marcus was not part of the music industry, nor was he someone chasing fame or attention. He made his living through a skilled and humble profession. He was a barber. Through that line of work, Marcus became connected to a younger man from the community who was gaining fast momentum online, Kadarius Pride. The 21-year-old rapper, performing under the name Superstar Pride, posted a snippet of his song Painting Pictures, which went completely viral.
Whenever I speak up, you gon' hear it, you gon' feel me. I'm the purest, niggas queers, really real. When you alone, it really firm. Stand on my own, I don't need you near. Ain't no man that I fear. Bust that 5, won't shed a tear. Walk him down, come here. Skirt out 392, and I swear. Skills I know.
Seeing the attention and love the snippet was getting, he released the full song as his breakout single. The song spread rapidly across platforms like TikTok and YouTube, racking up tens of millions of views. It even climbed onto the Billboard Top 100 chart. But for Pride, it wasn't just the music that caught people's attention. It was also his look. His haircut became a distinctive part of his identity. Short in the front, long in the back. That very style, according to Pride, was suggested by Marcus. It wasn't just a casual recommendation. It became a defining feature of the young rapper's brand. It was so bizarre that it made him stand out amongst others. Marcus himself worked out of a mobile home located along Highway 35 North. He didn't have a flashy online presence or a history of controversy. Reports suggest he had no public romantic relationships and no known children. He lived a quiet life, and many described him as someone who tried to help others whenever he could. His grandmother, Mary Ann Strong, remained one of his closest relatives and lived nearby. Marcus and Pride shared a close relationship, one that extended even beyond a barber and client relationship. According to those who knew them, Marcus had even acted as a form of personal security for the young musician. Some referred to Marcus as Pride's unofficial bodyguard. Others saw him as a mentor or older brother figure. But Marcus was not aware of some of the Pride's struggles. The young rapper struggled with undocumented mental health issues that left those closest to him, including family, worried. It made him erratic and a risk, especially since he was someone with easy access to weapons. However, Marcus cared for him anyway and maintained an amicable relationship and peaceful lifestyle. For Pride, on the other hand, his life was getting more buzz as he became more famous. His high-charting song brought so much good for Pride. A record label even offered him $3 million deal based on that one song alone. He turned the offer down.
He then dropped the official song and it instantly charted, causing one record label to offer him a $3 million record deal, all from just one viral snippet. Within just a few weeks, this man had gained everything he'd ever dreamed of. However, little did he know, it was all about to come crashing down.
Superstar Pride believed better things were coming his way, and he was worth more. So he demanded $5 million and believed he was going to get it, and he might have. But just 3 weeks later, Pride would absolutely destroy his good fortune with his own hands. On the afternoon of July 19th, 2023, Mary Ann, Marcus's grandmother, was inside the home when 21-year-old Superstar Pride entered. Moments later, she heard voices raised. It wasn't immediately clear what triggered the argument, but the tension escalated quickly. Marcus fled out the back door, running into the field behind the property. It was then that Pride chased him down with a gun in his hand. And before she could understand what was happening, the shots rang out. She watched in terror as Marcus collapsed, but it didn't stop there. Pride continued to fire even after Marcus had fallen. And then, as she stood nearby, he turned to her, and she realized this might be her turn to die. Instead, he asked a deadly question. Pride pointed the gun directly at her and asked if she planned to say anything. She was frozen. She didn't respond. Without a word, Pride returned to Marcus's body. According to the witness account, he fired one last round, this time into Marcus's head, then he fled.
He fell here. He shot about 3 times after he fell. And he walked over to me and he pointed the gun at me and asked me if I was going to tell it. And he came back out here and fired a last shot in his head.
The red pickup truck he had arrived in sped away from the scene. Mary Ann stood in shock and pain, unable to call the police as she mourned her grandson. Luckily, although she was the only one to have seen the whole thing go down, she was not the only one to have heard the shots. Soon, someone else would make the call. Deputies were dispatched to the scene around 12:30 p.m. that Wednesday after a report of gunfire at a residence along Highway 35 North. When officers arrived, they encountered a grisly sight. 40-year-old Marcus Wheatley lay unresponsive in the field behind his mobile home with multiple gunshot wounds. Marcus Wheatley was declared dead at the scene. Standing nearby, visibly shaken and grief-stricken, was Mary Ann Strong, the grandmother of the victim. Officers secured the scene and immediately began their initial interviews. Mary Ann's account was clear and detailed. She had seen everything, from the moment Kadarius Pride, better known as Superstar Pride, entered her grandson's home, to the final shot that ended Marcus's life. And just like Pride had feared, she was very willing to talk. She told deputies that Pride and Marcus had gotten into a heated exchange. Then, she said, Marcus ran. Pride chased him down while firing his weapon. Even after Marcus fell, Pride continued shooting. Mary Ann then recalled how Pride turned the gun on her and demanded to know whether she intended to speak up about what she'd seen. Her statement didn't just provide emotional context. It offered law enforcement a direct identification of the suspect. But by the time deputies arrived, Pride had already fled. With Mary Ann's statement on record, police immediately issued a bulletin for 21-year-old Kadarius Pride, who was now wanted for questioning in connection with the homicide. Investigators quickly gathered evidence from the scene, including shell casings. Next came the witness statements from nearby residents who had heard the gunshots. Police continued canvassing the area, and soon they discovered a huge clue. Police located a red pickup truck parked and abandoned in Pope, Mississippi, not far from the crime scene. The vehicle matched the one Mary Ann Strong had seen Pride drive away in following the shooting. This detail corroborated her story and added a second layer of physical evidence linking Pride to the scene. By that point, law enforcement had begun treating the case as a fugitive situation. They reached out to the public and began tracking potential leads on Pride's whereabouts. But then, the case took an unexpected turn. Around 4:47 p.m., just over 4 hours after the shooting, Chief Deputy Reginald Lantern received a call from a family member of Kadarius Pride. The relative relayed a crucial message. Pride wanted to turn himself in. But no one believed it until Superstar Pride proved it to be true. That same afternoon, Pride voluntarily surrendered to law enforcement. He was taken into custody without incident and transported to the Panola County Detention Center. The charges were swift and serious, first-degree murder. Authorities made it clear that Pride was being held without bond, and his booking sent shock throughout both the music world and his local Mississippi community. The arrest marked a dramatic fall from grace for a young man who had, just weeks prior, been celebrating the success of his song Painting Pictures, which had gone viral and even charted on Billboard. As investigators continued their work, more pieces of the case began to emerge. The narrative forming around the motive suggested a personal dispute, not a random act of violence. One of the most widely circulated accounts came from Mary Ann Strong, who believed the shooting may have been connected to a disagreement over a music video.
He wanted Marcus to follow him, and Marcus couldn't do it. He couldn't help him make more money.
According to her, Pride had asked Marcus to join him on a trip to California for an upcoming shoot. Marcus, she said, declined. That refusal may have escalated existing tensions, but authorities have not yet publicly confirmed this motive. Despite multiple interviews and reports, police have not released an official explanation as to what triggered the confrontation. As of now, they have cited the ongoing nature of the investigation and pending legal proceedings. What they have confirmed is that the evidence collected, eyewitness testimony, the abandoned vehicle, and Pride's own surrender was enough to support the charge of first-degree murder. Meanwhile, the broader community in Panola County was left grappling with disbelief. Marcus Wheatley had no known criminal record. He was a respected figure in his neighborhood, and many were shocked that his life had ended in such a violent and public way. Pride's supporters, too, were left reeling. How could a rising star, someone who had overcome poverty and gained recognition for his raw lyrics and distinct delivery, throw everything away in a moment of rage? As the investigation continued, other troubling details began to surface. Reports revealed that just 2 days before the murder, a family member of Pride's had actually filed paperwork requesting a mental health evaluation. That paperwork was submitted to the sheriff's office, citing concerns about Pride's mental state. However, it appears that no action was taken on that request before the deadly shooting occurred. That revelation raised more questions than answers. Was this a case of untreated mental illness? Had there been signs of instability that were missed or ignored? Was the crime premeditated or the result of a sudden psychological break? Law enforcement hasn't yet provided those answers. What's certain is that superstar Pride now faced the reality of sitting behind bars, possibly for life. And back in Panola County, a grandmother still mourned the loss of her grandson, left with the haunting memory of watching him die. But justice would not come easily, and the battle was far from over. So, where's superstar Pride now? As of now, Pride remains in custody, facing a first-degree murder charge. No trial date has been announced, and no sentencing has occurred. But for those closest to the victim, and for the community that watched both men grow up, the damage was already irreversible. Even without a courtroom verdict, the emotional toll was evident. Marcus's grandmother, Marianne Strong, was more than just a witness. She had experienced the loss in the most traumatic way imaginable, watching her grandson die in front of her. Her statements to the press reflected a mix of sorrow and disbelief. She described Marcus as a soft-hearted man, someone who went out of his way to help others, and someone who didn't deserve the violent fate that met him that day. What made the tragedy even harder to accept was the relationship between Marcus and Pride. Marcus wasn't a rival or a stranger. He had known Pride for years. He had cut his hair, shaped the style that helped define the rapper's visual image, and some saw him as Pride's mentor or older brother figure. So when news broke that Pride had allegedly shot Marcus multiple times and then threatened his grandmother before delivering a final bullet to the head, many in the community struggled to process it. Why would a man on the brink of national fame commit such a heinous act? Why would he destroy the very foundation of trust that had supported his rise? Family members of both men were largely quiet in the days following the arrest. Marcus Wheatley's family grieved in private, with no public announcements about funeral services or memorials. As of now, no official obituary or funeral details have been released to the public. But those who knew Marcus continued to speak of him with respect. They described a man who loved his grandmother, who had worked hard his entire life, and who remained humble even as those around him gained attention and influence. On the other side of the story, Pride's father, Jeffrey Anderson, expressed shock and sadness at what had transpired.
It's still just something that's got to be looked into and to see what all transpired. As of now, it's just so early.
In a statement to the press, he said it was too early to understand what had really happened or why. He urged people not to jump to conclusions, suggesting that more context might emerge in time. Still, there was no excuse for what had unfolded, and no explanation would ever bring Marcus back. Pride's musical trajectory had been promising. Now, instead of touring or recording music, Pride sits in a jail cell, facing a possible life sentence. His future is uncertain, and the silence from his legal team suggests that the case is still under heavy review. Prosecutors have made no public statement about seeking the death penalty, but given the eyewitness testimony, the violent nature of the crime, and the suspect's immediate flight from the scene, the charge of first-degree murder is considered serious and likely to be prosecuted to the fullest extent. These details lead us to the final question. How did this happen? What systems failed? Could a mental health intervention have changed the outcome? And perhaps most importantly, what are we doing as communities to prevent this kind of senseless violence? If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, emotional regulation, or violent thoughts, don't wait. Reach out to professionals, counselors, or community leaders who can help. Sometimes, just one conversation can prevent a tragedy. To those mourning Marcus Wheatley, we see you. We grieve with you. Rest in peace, Marcus Wheatley. Let us know what you think in the comments section below.